Tonight we're going to be tying a bass popper called the sock'em popper. And what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to take my foam head, which has a hole pre-drilled into it. I'm going to place it onto the hook. Kind of seat it where it's going to end up when the fly is finished, so I can tell where I'm going to start my thread. And I want to start it right behind that foam head and take the head off. And the reason I'm doing that is now I've marked on the hook shank where I want my materials to stop. I'm going to advance my thread back to the end of the straight portion of the shank. Once right before we get to that bend is where I want to start my first material, which is going to be a olive barred rabbit zonker. I'm going to take it and I'm going to trim the hide just a tad bit longer. And you know what? We'll do just right at the length of the hook shank. And this is going to be the tail of our fly. I had a Red Bull before this, a little shaky. Spin my thread counterclockwise, that way when I bring it up, it falls back toward my fingers. And capture that hide just enough to where I can lock it in place. Now I'm going to take a material by Perfect Hatch, and I think it's pronounced Spriggle, S-B-R-I-G-G-L-E. It's essentially a small Palmer chenille. I'm going to tie that in right on top of that hide and bring my thread forward. Now I'm going to wrap. What this is going to do is going to give us some flash when the light hits the fly, but it's not going to bring too much bulk, so it should still cast fairly easily. And it doesn't need to be super dense. I think I did 4 wraps there. I'm going to capture that and trim it out. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a hairline hen saddle in olive. I want to find some fibers that are going to hang back just past that spriggle we tied on into the rabbit tail. And I want a lot of fluff at the bottom of the feather, because that's going to give us a really nice profile, really good movement in the water. Peel back the fibers and tie in the tip. Then I'll take my scissors and trim out the excess of the tip. Bring my thread back to where I started it. I'm going to do my best to fold these feather fibers back as best as I can. But if you don't, it's okay, because that foam head is going to help push everything backwards. And I kind of want these fibers to be thick, so I'm going to wrap until I get to some of that fuzz. Touching wraps. The stem of the feather is going to be touching. I want it dense. Once we get about to where we started our thread, we're going to capture 2 wraps, fold it back, do 2 wraps in front of the stem, and trim it out. Oops. I'm going to cover up those butt ends. So now what I'm going to do, we've got the back end of our popper ready. I'm going to bring my thread forward, and I'm going to do some loose wraps all the way to the eye. To give that slick hook surface, I'm going to rough it up. And then I'm going to build some thread bumps, 1 or 2 of them. What that's going to do, it's going to keep that head from spinning so easily and give something for the glue to really grab onto. Just want to rough up that shank. Now I'm going to take some Loctite. This is the Ultra Gel, and the reason we want to use gel, the reason I use gel, is when you're using a material that'll absorb your glue. If you use something that's too thin, it's just going to absorb it and not adhere very well, in my experience. So I'll take the gel. It takes a little longer to dry, but that's okay. Put some on that hook shank. Gonna wrap my thread through it. Little half hitch. Now we take our foam head. We're gonna push it onto the shank over the glue. Slowly, so it kind of leaves the glue underneath the head until the eye pops out. We're going to situate the head so you see how it forced those feather fibers back and gave it a nice cone shape, laying over that spriggle, that flash. We have a little bit of glue behind the head to help lock in that feather, so if it breaks, if the stem breaks, it's not going to come unraveled. So now the tying portion is done. I'm going to take it's an offshore rigging needle for conventional, bait fishing. I'm going to run this as straight as I can through the foam head from one side to the other. If you use one of these, they're incredibly sharp, so you got to be careful. Watch your fingers. So I've got that through as straight as I could. If it's a little crooked, that's all right. I don't think the fish will mind much. Maybe. Take 2 olive barred rubber legs, and I'm going to knot them. What that knot's going to do, it's going to help lock the legs inside of this foam head. Knotted them as centered as I could. Once I've fed them into the needle, I'm going to pull the needle all the way through. Once I get the needle close, I'm going to kind of hang on to one end of those legs so I don't pull them all the way through. We got them. Make sure our knot is inside the foam head. And I want these to stick out a little bit. You don't want them to be super long. I don't want them to foul on the hook. But I do want them to hang out a little bit. Oops. So we got our legs coming through. If you want to, I don't think you have to, but a lot of the times a lot of people like to put eyes on their flies. So we can glue some eyes on here, and I'm going to warn you, this is typically where I mess the fly up because I get them off center. But I'll take the same gel, super glue, put a little dot. Man, I am shaky. Press my eye on. You can use a bodkin. I'm going to use my needle since I have it ready. Go to the other side of the head here. And there it is, the sock and popper.